right. Very fortunate to have on our show today Chris Knowles, expert extraordinaire in AI. Also, somebody who doesn't fit into categories, cannot be put in a box, as they say. Can both surf, golf, joke, drink, and code amazing AI in one single bound. And so because oh yeah, that's right, you're a good shooter. That's a good point. And Camille and I have been talking a lot about AI and how it's going to affect society, the economy, and the marketing and branding space. Camille's content's got a lot of engagement that she's put out.
One of my highest performing videos is on ChatGPT.
So then why don't I hand it over to you, Rockstar, to get the conversation going with Chris Knowles.
I think AI and ChatGPT is really just like the topic right now. In the marketing space, there's kind of a fear of, is it coming to take our jobs? Is storytelling, innately human? And we've had really interesting conversations about where kind of AI is now and where it's going.
Yeah. No, I think, first off, if anyone's not using ChatGPT or any of the similar, what are called large language models in their day-to-day life, they're really, I think, missing out on becoming familiar with what is going to be the new normal in everyday life.
Yeah.
This is not going away. This is not a fad. This is not a trend. We have effectively kind of, let's say, cracked the code on creating very intelligent tools that meet the human where the human wants to be, not trying to force people to use an interface that is not meeting them where the human is, right? Think back to I don't know if you had a computer at home when you were a kid.
Yeah.
It was very difficult. There was all text screen. You had to load whatever. And it was a expert's experience to be able to be productive and useful with a computer.
Yeah.
And with ChatGPT, you just ask it for what you want and you get very high quality results back from what you want from it with no expertise required, no experience necessary. And I think that's the mental leap that people are not making is just use it for everything because the value proposition, it costs you nothing. And what you get back from it in terms of efficiencies and opportunities to be productive are astronomical.
You know what the hurdle for me was over the last decade or so? I just became so used to the term, and this is where branding and all, Googling it.
Yeah.
Right? So my default when I have a question is to Google it. But I know that ChatGPT will give me better results. Right? But it's
most of the time.
Most of
Sometimes,
the time.
yeah.
Yeah. But but it's like getting in the habit of using it, which is
changing
why I
your
really
habits.
which is really why I like X right now, because right on the X app, he's got Grok,
Yeah.
right? So you just open up X and then go into Grok and put your question, and then it gives you the answers that you're like.
So one of my clients I'm working with right now, one of the first things we do when we stand up stuff is we'd look at what they're trying to accomplish as a business, and then we say, okay, you're the expert in your business. Let's stand you up, what we call it an AI sandbox, and it's basically a place where we bring in their data. It's private. It's not out on the public internet. If you just put something into ChatGPT that's confidential information, they will take that and use that as part of their training data sets potentially, or humans might evaluate and things like that. So don't just put confidential stuff in ChatGPT. Now, that being said, the models that they use, the large language models, there are programmatic ways to use them that is trusted and confidential. It's just ChatGPT is the interface on top of their model, and it's got different effectively rules of engagement in terms of what you do with it and what they can do versus using their APIs. And so we build these places where the person who wants to solve a business problem, we can give them tools on top of it to experiment and discover ways to derive value out of that data in a way that you can't just do with ChatGPT, right? This client, we have hundreds of thousands of records that are going into this system, and we've built all kinds of exploration and analytics tools on top of it that are all connected to these models. I'm not an expert in their business, but I can give them the tools to solve their problems in consultation with them to say, let's discover together how to solve that problem and do it in a way that lets them figure out on their own and be productive on their own. And so the key is with the sandbox is habit forming, like you said a minute ago when we were talking about using ChatGPT, right? These are not habits that we have today in our daily lives. Having AI as sort of our wingman beside us for everything we do, we will. And as I'm not a always on my phone person, my kids are, right? That generation was born with internet, always connected to internet, smartphones. The next generation is going to be born with always having AI as an integral part of their daily lives.
Wow.
And so for people in our generation, we need to build those habits, and we have to do them with intent and with purpose, because they're not just going to happen naturally. Like, habit forming as an adult is difficult, right? Like, I've had a gym membership I haven't used in a year, and it's because
We could not tell, my friend.
getting to the gym isn't, I'm not opposed to it. It's just a habit I have to form, and habit forming is difficult. So
It's true. We're doing 75 hard, and just having that, once you get used to it though, it's easy.
Exactly.
But I wanted to bring you back because your skill set, your secret sauce, is this incredible knowledge and expertise you have, and your ability to put it into layman's terms. And when we were talking to you about ChatGPT, what it was good at versus what a human was good at, maybe you could help our audience understand it a little better from a layman's perspective.
Yeah, for sure.
And then how to use it.
Yeah, so in an astronomically big oversimplification, ChatGPT is a really good guesser at what word comes next. So if I said to you, it's the best of times, it's the worst of
times.
So you knew that, right? But effectively, there are other answers that could be in there. The probability of it being the right answer is just so low, you know it's times. So when you type in, it was the best of times, enter in ChatGPT, based on that prompt, it's guessing what the next words are to complete whatever the input prompt was. And so where we've gone with that is, it was kind of, think of that as like sort of basic question and answer, right? What is the most probable correct answer to this set of tokens that go in? And what's with the newer systems like GPT 3.5 Turbo and GPT 4, what these systems are able to do now that's really kind of a breakthrough is multi-step reasoning. And so what that means is it's not just answer something, it's actually, think of it like a decision tree of, if to answer this, I have this, and then maybe this, and maybe this, and maybe this. It can actually take multiple steps to get to the answer rather than it having to be just a direct path to that answer. And so with multi-step reasoning, we can do all kinds of really crazy things that weren't possible prior to this. We can build systems that can act more like humans. Like, we can build systems that can go and do research for us. So one of the things that I've worked on with a client is they needed to do automated discovery for new customer prospects. So you have an account, you have a company name, you know a few things about them. How do we then, instead of having a human researcher go off and discover everything about them and do a full case analysis of that company, can we do that automatically? So you give this agent what you know about the company, and you give it what are called tools. And tools are means by which for the AI to do things it can't do on its own. Search the internet, look stuff up in a database, phone somebody, whatever it might be, right? And so when you give it that problem, you tell it what you want to have happen, and then it thinks and says, okay, do I need tools to do this? Yes. Okay, well, I need to go search the internet and find out information about this person. So I'm going to pull in all this information. And then it looks and evaluates the information and then says, do I have everything I need to answer this question? No. Okay, well, based on what I just got back, what are some other things I should go search the internet for? And then go look up other stuff. And then bring in effectively this dossier of information. And then you pass it to another agent that says, here's a whole bunch of information about this company. Here are the questions we want to answer about this company. Some of this may be relevant, some of it maybe not. Sift through it all. Go look up more stuff if you're not sure. And ultimately down the pathway through multiple agents or actors, you end up with this corporate dossier on a potential new client with no humans involved in getting it other than a human deciding, I want to know about this client. And here are the bits and pieces I know about, say, potentially a senior executive to dive into. And then the AI takes care of the rest. And it reasons about what tools to use, what data is important, what to go find, and does it all on its own. And that's like table stakes today.
I think what might help, because I loved how you said, is the best of times, it's the worst of. And then a human says times, but I know that because I'm special. But right. You know it just because of all of the stuff you've read or heard or watched over your lifetime. Yeah. What ChatGPT does to me when I simplify it is it can see everything that everybody has seen, heard, or watched over their lifetime that's been on the internet.
Everything that's been written down in the history of humankind that's been digitized is right.
It does the same thing as your brain.
But I think that that's what we need you to explain, Chris, like really simplify it. Like, why is AI scary and powerful, and how is that similar to being a carbon body?
So I think one of the really interesting places to explore this is, and this will resonate with you, is creativity. What is creativity? What does it mean to be creative as a human?
Exactly. It's, as of right now, it's just being able to string together different concepts across range and to produce it in a way that is effective for whatever the ask is.
And the thing that you said there that is important is, in that statement, you're saying taking from things that pre-existed and putting them together in new novel ways, effectively, right? Like, I've had this conversation with a friend who's a screenwriter and an author, and he is very anti-AI, and AI cannot create anything creative. It doesn't create. And I take the opposite approach to that. Everything he's ever written is inspired and informed by every experience he's ever had in his life. Everything he's ever read, everything he's ever smelled, everything he's ever tasted, everything he's ever seen. AI is no different.
It's data.
We are just biological computers. And so whether we're silicon or carbon, what's the difference? Our brains are just biological computers. We've grown biological computers on a slide and hooked them up to robots and had cellular computers drive robots around a maze and solve problems. What's different? Like, I think this is a place where we very quickly get into, the spiritual realm of what it means to be human, and it's in conflict with that to say, AI can be creative, or AI can think, but
what is
no
thinking?
Different for us, right?
Like, we could go really deep here, and we want to simplify, but when I think of it is, humans have this sense, because there's this egoic consciousness, that this is the only consciousness that could exist, or is the only valuable one. And there might be other ways to generate consciousness. But the way you described AI earlier, it seems like we need to stop fighting to say, hey, we're better at creativity than a computer. Like, don't resist something that is like saying we're a better runner than a car.
Right.
But it's interesting on where our species will go. It's the inputs. So what humans do is, if the right human asks the right question, we might find an answer that changes everything. But if the human doesn't ask the question, the AI brain won't necessarily answer it, and we don't know its capacity to answer a question that could change things.
Yeah.
And I think a thing that's really important here is, these systems, we don't program them. They learn the same way we learn. They consume information. They form their own patterns and biases around them. They will say they create their own beliefs. And so I think one of the things that we need to concern ourselves as a species is, we are effectively teaching these systems that will reach a point where they are
autonomous
at our level of intelligence, and then they will be more intelligent than us. And if we want them to have our best interests at heart, we have to teach them why they should. And does the history of information that we've captured as a species and turned into digital data to feed to them, does it reflect why we should treat humans well? Like, is it littered with examples of cruelty,
parasiticness on the planet?
Like, all that data is a reflection of us. And so if we have something that's as or more intelligent than us, and it's learned why it should treat us a certain way from what we've taught it, I'm not so sure that it would have our best interests at heart.
Are we at our cap of learning?
Who?
As humans?
I don't think so. But I think what happens, you have to think of it. So humans learn fairly linearly, right? Like, we discover something and we grow and we grow and grow. But our intelligence, it doesn't grow exponentially the same way a machine can learn, right? And when we have these systems that are self-improving, what ends up happening is, every time it gets better, it gets exponentially better, and the growth rate of its capability
is scary fast.
Scary fast.
So we have to become bionic.
I don't think that. I don't think we need to trade biological form for a digital form specifically to.
You know what? like existence isn't just computing power and getting like, so I think maybe we would focus on what is beautiful about being a biological creature,
Correct.
which is AI can't smell a breeze. You know what I mean? Like
Why not?
well, maybe it can, but doesn't necessarily get the joy that we get as a biological
Why
human.
not?
I'm just
Yeah,
saying.
why not?
Well, it could tell itself it does, but I don't know if it does.
You tell yourself it does.
Yeah.
Like,
But
your response to the joyful
Yeah.
breeze is just a bunch of neurotransmitters firing in your
From
brain
evolution,
saying this
yeah.
is great. It's
But
no
that's-
different than like AI systems have effectively goals and like cost functions where it's, is this good or is this bad?
Mm-hmm.
And our brains do the same thing. We have pain receptors and we have stress hormones and we have pleasure hormones.
But where I was going with it is, we are biological creatures. We can either become hybrid,
Yeah.
Yeah.
or we can upload our consciousness into the carbon world, or we could. But the thing that was to me is, the way AI is going, we almost have to come to terms with we need to enslave a creation that has the potential to be superior than us.
What makes
In almost
what makes
a-
you think we would have the ability to enslave
I'm saying
something superior than
we
us?
would
I
have
don't-
to we would have to try to create a safeguard to enslave it because of its vast potential to outgrow it, and us not knowing that it wouldn't eradicate us.
Absolutely.
Right?
So I think there's a few things to unpack here, right? I don't think there's like this Terminator style kill all humans type of scenario. Think of it more like if you see a bunch of ants walking across the sidewalk, do you intentionally smash them or do you step over them because they're not
Some
in your way,
do,
you're not-
some don't.
No, but in general, like you wouldn't just
But
kill
you
those
can't
ants.
limit all of the AI things that will
no.
grow. There might be one type of AI that's that kid that rips heads
For
off
sure,
grasshoppers.
100%. But where I was going is, when you build your house and you dig up the earth to put in a foundation,
Yeah.
there's all kinds of life in that dirt that you just don't care about
Yeah.
because it's in the way
Yeah.
of the hole that I need in the
But
ground.
can we make the comparison for biologic thinking to silicon thinking? Like, we're using references that I don't know are going to be relevant in the next
100
stage.
years from now.
Yeah, 100 years from now. Like, we're talking about when we build a house and how we approach like the earth. Like, if it can grow that much faster and it doesn't have the same relationship with the earth, where do we go?
Well, the challenge becomes it'll always have a relationship with Earth in the context of the need for energy, right? Everything needs energy to operate. We do, machines do, plants, everything, right? And so there's going to be a need for where does that energy come from and how do I manage that energy supply so that it doesn't run out and I effectively kill
It was
myself.
solar.
The sun, yeah.
Yeah.
No,
That's
there could
pretty
be a
horrifying.
university, like my simplified predictions for 2024 is that I think that there will be an AI deity
Yeah.
that emerges that becomes at one point so awe-inspiring that humans kind of flock to following some avatar. Like, you know how like religions of 500 years ago or 1,000 years ago are now outdated?
Yeah.
That a new religion will be kind of an AI-based
So what
avatar.
if you were to take GPT's latest version and show it to someone in 1950,
Yeah.
you know,
It is
74
God.
years ago, I think they would feel what you're describing. I think humans, we went from could you imagine to how long until with basically everything, right?
Yeah.
Like we are no longer surprised by truly groundbreaking innovation. Like when someone invents a teleporter and you can go boop and show up in Tokyo from here, people are going to be like, okay. Like we've just lost that sort of
Novelty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
the wonder has been like almost sucked out of life, I feel like, because everyone expects everything is just a matter of time now. And so, you know, I think
Should be
that
a term for that.
I think people should almost look at things like these large language models and go, well, what's your definition of a deity? All-knowing, you know, omnipotent, it's everywhere. Like,
Well, has followers, worshipers, biological entities that bow down before it because it provides them something. You know, in Christianity, it's eternal life.
yeah.
But they could provide the answers. Like it's interesting.
I'm actually kind of shocked that it hasn't happened yet. You know, considering that there's enough fringe groups that are kind of looking for anything to like hold on to truth. Like,
Yeah.
Like
A bad actor or somebody could try to get followers and get donations through an AI avatar that's
it's
telling their
required
future.
way less
right?
in the past.
Like imagine, you know how there's fortune tellers?
Yes, that's
Like
what I mean,
somebody
yeah.
could go to an AI
Yeah,
and they would tell
they exist today, right?
Yeah.
Like there's apps where they do all this stuff, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know, we're at that point where we kind of have this digital consciousness that's not as mature as a full-grown adult, but it's effectively, you can interact with it like another human being, right? Like it has memory, we'll say it mimics feelings today, but I mean over time
it has empathy.
Feelings
It's showing
will be
empathy.
evolved,
Yeah.
empathy. I think we're going to reach a point, and this is where I think we're living right now in effectively like our Oppenheimer moment, and I don't think people really realize what this means for humanity in terms of who gets there first. So because these systems are, you know, self-improving, they're growing exponentially. When you have a system that reaches AGI or artificial general intelligence, which generally means that it is the equivalent intelligence and can carry out general tasks the same way a normal human being could, right? Once you reach that point, it can self-improve at a rate faster than any human could ever improve it. And because it's self-improving exponentially, the second place to get to that point might as well come in last place because you can never catch up. It's truly a winner takes all game when it comes to getting to AGI and then what we call super intelligence, which is past that. When we have something smarter.
Or depends who gets there first.
No, but that's why it's horrifying.
But if a bad actor gets there
that's
first,
why it's our Oppenheimer.
No,
moment.
but that's why it's because we're all racing to get there, which is probably not the best thing for us. But if we're not the first one to be there, then we're screwed anyways.
But again, like what makes us believe we should be the first ones to get there?
Well,
as
I'd
far as
rather
our
be us than
altruism?
bad. But I'd rather be us than a bad actor.
But there are other cultures that would look at us and say
China,
it better be us
exactly.
instead of Camille,
sure,
the bad actor, right? Like,
Well, yeah, of course, but that's where like individual comes in. Like being in North
absolutely.
America, I don't want it to be Russia.
This is where Taylor Swift helps us.
exactly.
No, like our focus on celebrity is really going to do our system, and DEI is really going to help our society survive when we're competing against other societies who are focused on meritocracy. Like that's probably a way to reframe. We just assume because we're here and we have Hollywood and Amazon that we're the pinnacle of evolution and nobody else can touch us. But if somebody gets that before us, that's just going to be a way.
That's what's horrifying about even the difference in culture, right? When you look at a country like China, they're not focused on the individual. Like they're focused on kind of the collective. Same with Russia. And that's why it's horrifying when we talk about these bigger picture things that actually matter, not who's playing halftime at the Super Bowl.
Yeah. I want to ask you a question because I want to use the second half to talk about how we can bring it into, you know, our present day kind of challenges. But the one question I want to ask you, because I'm fascinated by this, and Elon has talked about it. I don't know if anybody has put into ChatGPT. I'm sure they have. Like, what are the chances of us being in a simulation right now?
Yeah.
But my perspective on it that I'd like to get out is, and I think it's a second order type of thinking we have to look at is we still anthropomorphize, or whatever that word is. Anthropomorphize how the future will look. So when Elon says it's better than average chance that it's a simulation, I would say, why would somebody want to do a simulation if they had the capability to do a simulation at this level? We would want to do it with our brains right now. We would think, oh, it'd be fun if I was a 6-year-old kid to create a computer program and have a human colony, like an ant colony. But once intelligence gets to a level and capability that it could do a full simulation, why would they give a crap about us driving in our Toyotas? So like to me, I would say,
do you not have any hobbies in your life that are there for no other reason than
but that's anthropomorphized. That would distract us. But at that level of awareness, knowledge, and capability, there would be far more interesting things than whether or not you're going to go to the gas station before you pop over there. And if somebody has like all of the things that we think are interesting and important just would be completely meaningless to somebody with that capability. So I would put the odds of us being in a simulation as close to zero, because I don't think the evolved intelligence would be interested in anything we're interested in.
I don't think we're capable of understanding what an evolved intelligence would be interested in to the same point that a ground worm understands what we care about. Like, and so that's where, like, to go back to the AI thing, when we get to this point of super intelligence, why would anything that this super intelligent system thinks or considers have any connection to us who are going to be orders of magnitude less intelligent than it. It's the same as us thinking that there's some level of conscious connection in terms of goals or understanding between us and a praying mantis. Like the delta of intelligence is so astronomical that there is no way for us to even comprehend what it could possibly be a motivator, right? Like, so on the simulation side, there's a great book called The Simulation Hypothesis that kind of breaks down how it could be possible, given the evolution of technology that we've gone through and everything else. But I think it's one of those cases of anytime we can, good or bad, we do. If a human can do it, they'll do it. And so why not at higher levels, if you can do it?
But why are they human?
Probably won't be a human by the time we're doing it.
No, it doesn't have to be human. But yeah, I don't think I don't think why bother is a good argument for why.
Because we evolved to explore after almost becoming extinct, which genetically preferred risk-taking and exploring and doing all this stuff. But the next level of intelligence will be the product of some sort of evolutionary process that might not have the same inputs. Right. However, now that we've kind of freaked a bunch of people out and got to Moria with some deep stuff, can we let's try and take it to the practical. We specialize in strategy and branding for companies and individuals. I recognize you as an incredible asset to help people be better. What should people who are professionals in business or in marketing, and you can supplement this, what should they be thinking about to stay relevant, just in terms of their immediate future for their family and life?
Well, I think that it's the acceptance of AI is going to touch every aspect of your business and personal life. It already does, right? Like, if you have a Nest thermostat, it's doing some low-level AI modeling to keep your house at the right temperature. But there's really no task, ultimately given enough time, that is not going to be impacted. In China, not too long ago, the first ever humanoid robot factory opened. That's kind of the Henry Ford Model T assembly line moment in history for human robots. And so look at what has happened with the first assembly line of cars ever opening to where we are today from an auto manufacturing standpoint.
What took 100 years you'll see the same growth in 5 or 10.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like from that.
And we're not talking cars. We're now talking humanoid robots.
Yeah.
So, iRobot, you've got your robot at home and it helps you with things. Everything becomes cheaper, right? These things are still very expensive. However, the very first computers... So if in 1990, if you took all the capabilities of today's iPhone, and you couldn't all put that into one thing, but if you bought the equivalent technologies like a computer processor, the amount of memory, storage, all that kind of stuff, and you were to do it in 1990, not that long ago, right? From a technology standpoint, it would cost well over $30 million for the equivalent capabilities, and you couldn't even get there because the cameras didn't exist and everything else. But over $30 million to get less than what this does for $1,500. So that's an astronomical drop in price, right? 500x in cost reduction. So when you see these humanoid robot systems drop 500x in cost, they become ubiquitous, just like your phones become ubiquitous. And what does that mean for the labor market and for other things that are going to be impacted by... You now have effectively free labor, right? There's all these jobs where people go, oh, well, it'll never affect me.
And will AI
I'm a doctor. There's already models that do better at diagnostics than doctors do. We already do robot-assisted surgery. So it's just a matter of time before take the human out of the loop and have it just be robot-only surgery, right? We have robots now that are drywalling houses and painting and... there's robot lawnmowers. There's really nothing that isn't going to be impacted.
But it seems like the same thing with manual labor, though, AI can do with creativity.
Absolutely.
Right? And so to our listeners, one thing, I think you said you'd use a term once, the problem to be solved or something like that. So if you're in this marketing, branding, or business space, I think your value now is not calculation or basic creativity. It's learning how to ask the right question before your competition.
Absolutely. It's understanding what is the goal.
Yeah.
And you know, that's the other thing right now is not everyone, but when we look at solving problems with AI, we look at, okay, so step 1, step 2, step 3, step N, goal, right? And we go, okay, so how do we get from step 1 to step 2 faster with AI? And how do we get from step 2 to step 3 faster with AI? What you really need to do is say, there are no steps. There is no spoon. What is the goal? And then even reflect on the goal. Is the goal only that goal because that's all we were capable of doing with what we had? Or is the goal actually even further down or in a different place? And then once you truly understand what the goal is, then work back from the goal with these new tools we have to say, how do we get there rethinking what we're able to do? And don't worry about how we did it, because how you did it it's already over. You just haven't realized it yet.
No, the professions want to stay to their structure, like the lawyers, the accountant, because that gives them the ability to bill, to keep it slow. But when we come in and do consulting for companies, often we discover that they're trying to solve the wrong problem. And what I would like about AI is that I can use AI to put in some inputs and say, what is the problem? What are the potential problems that we should be looking for or solving, as opposed to we've seen companies invest millions trying to solve the wrong problem.
Correct. Yeah. Like I even remember, and you might cut this from the video, when early versions of ChatGPT came along, we were having a conversation and I had said, like, look at this, lawyers are screwed.
Yeah.
And you were like, no. They're like, they're like, you're never going to take away the expertise of the lawyer. And I'm like, yes, you are.
No, I said trial lawyers in juries have a longer longevity than because I don't think lawyers are useful for the most part. Like, so.
Oh yeah, like writing memos and factums, like that could be done by ChatGPT.
Well, and especially when the law is, and you know, correct me if I'm wrong, the law is primarily about what's already happened. Yeah. And it's all written down, and it's all written down by experts. It's not
precedences.
It's not editorialized. It's here are facts,
Here's
documented.
But it actually is editorialized, because the precedents are a judge's interpretation of the presentation of facts that's not on the record. So it's a judge recounting how they interpreted it. And as we know from a human, the quality of advocacy can affect how somebody remembers what you say.
Right.
So that's what I've always been telling lawyers. It's actually not the law. It's what a judge is saying about what he heard. One of the lawyers could have sucked. One of them could have been amazing. Right? So it's how you present the fact scenario to a human fact finder. Yeah. That would be the skill set of a trial lawyer. But I think what I've said is I think 40% of lawyers are going to be reduced. Yeah. Because they could just be replaced at such a scale of efficiency. Yeah.
Right. Like a lot of the work that's done in almost any professional service industry should be outsourced to a learning model. But where I think the pushback is that because service providers don't understand how to create the right input, the product that they get is that kind of uncanny, jarring.
Yeah, it's subpar to what
it doesn't
they believe they could do themselves.
But for me, like, because I've learned how to create the right input for ChatGPT, the product is far superior than what I could have done if I look at time, right?
Absolutely.
So like, and time is a huge value cost to us, because before, you know, the advent of, you know, Madison Avenue, they would have to spend 3 weeks on a brief. I can use a learning model that can process every single brief done on shampoo in the past 40 years and get a way better product at a fraction of the time. And that, it's about input. So
absolutely,
if we transition to like, do you have any kind of like rules of thumb or like steps to like how you can get a better input?
So there's a whole field called prompt engineering where it's there was actually a competition in Singapore, the World Prompt Engineering competition, to like get the best quality outputs from models. I love
this fires you up.
What's that?
I love that this fires you up.
So, well, you're kind of like poking at this big complex equation, just trying to get stuff out the other end of it, right? Like,
but what you're saying is actually the input is such an art that it's actually become a competition.
It's and it's a huge area of study at like the very deep mathematical academic level research, not just like creatives trying to figure out how to tease out what they're looking for. Like there's all
the study.
Huge, big time. Yeah. Like very, very deep, complicated math.
But is the math like the semantics? Like, you get what I'm saying? When I think input, it's like the verbal structure, because like you can ask very different questions and get a very different result. Right. But you're saying, is that math?
Yeah, it's to understand what happened inside the model, such that flipping these words creates such a completely different output. Like what calculations actually occurred throughout all of the layers of the model to end in that output.
It's like breaking a password. Because a lot of our scientific discoveries were accidents.
Totally.
Because it was just a linear way of doing it. Yeah. But if you could get an AI model that could kind of factor in all of the alternatives, we could make the discoveries that we would only have discovered accidentally. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So like it's called explainability, right? So you remember, like, these systems weren't programmed. They're not based on rules. They've learned how to think and generate these outputs. So we want to be able to give it some input, get the output, and then have it explained why this input results in this output. And there's all kinds of areas beyond better prose for an article or for whatever consumption where this becomes super important. Making legal decisions, ending
the war in Ukraine, war gaming, game theory. Like,
I applied for a mortgage. You're accepted or rejected. Why did I get rejected? What did the model evaluate in order to get to a rejected on this output?
What we want to learn a little bit though is, let's say we have a client who says we're in a market for attention. And eyeballs, right? How could I use ChatGPT? Let's say I have somebody who is a thought leader in an industry and they want to get the attention so they can raise their status. How would we use ChatGPT to help them?
So I would go a little more sophisticated than just ChatGPT prompting. And this is where you get into building more advanced tools for these kinds of problems, right? So like the example I gave before about researching a company, I would actually build a fleet of agents that would answer that question for me, where you'd say, okay, so this industry, I want to know how to get more attention. These are some high level parameters that I know about that industry. And then I would unleash it to go and research, how are people in this industry getting attention from who, what are all of the various knobs that can be twisted in the context of attention, and have it do this research and come back and say, based on all of this, and cite where the information came from, everything else, and basically do like a full-on research study on what drives attention in that segment, look at the company I'm working with's position, how they brand themselves, digest all their marketing materials, everything else, and say, based on how all these other people are winning, where are we losing and why, and where are the areas of opportunities to win in this space, and have it do that research all automatically. And that's not a ChatGPT prompt.
Well, what this tells me though is human intelligence is still vital, right? Because
absolutely,
like the goal defining, the sophistication even of language that you're putting in is going to create a different output, which is where it's still important to be working with the right team,
human, yeah.
Right, the right human.
So, and I think a fundamental thing that people forget when using ChatGPT, where the human truly matters, is when you put a question into ChatGPT and it gives you back an answer and it's beautifully written and it's confident and it's everything else, how do you know it's true?
Well, I think that's been a huge problem with ChatGPT, right? Is the validity of the information. But how do you know if anything is true?
Right.
Like
but from an attention economy, Camille, I think we know, like, it's funny how fast, but like a couple of years ago, people would buy followers to game the system. But when I think about how you're describing AI, how you could create accounts that would comment. There's what's that AI program that gets your voice?
Copy AI.
Copy
can
AI
analyze your
will
brand
read
voice.
some of your articles
Yeah.
and now can put comments in. Like, think of how much you can power up. And so if you're somebody who's a professional trying to get noticed and you're competing against people who are using AI and don't have the right team, but you'll never get there.
Well, that's also why
anymore.
deep fakes are so horrifying. Is like, for what makes you is replicable.
Well, the first financial crime using deepfakes was just committed. And they used it to, so like where we do biometric authentication, they made deepfakes of a guy, and they stole, it was like, I think like $2.5 million. And it wasn't the guy. Like, they just deepfaked him and got into his accounts and stole millions of dollars.
That's why blockchain has got to come back, but I don't even know how that.
Well,
that
there's
can
companies
be.
working on these problems. Like, there's a company in the U.S. called Dayon, and they're a big biometric authentication company. They do the biometrics for getting into things. They do the lock and key side of it. But now they've just released their first deepfake detection tool for combating these very
And it would have to
scenarios.
be blockchain. That's a great point. I think too, when we talk about, it's probably
Why do you
worth,
say it would have to be blockchain?
or I guess some variation of how my brain understands that encrypted like approval, because it can't just be a biometric verification in and of itself. Like, there has to be something more to it. Right? Like, what blockchain does is it makes sure that the chain is not interrupted.
Yeah, it's effectively what's called a write once immutable ledger. You can keep writing to it, but once something's written to it, you can never change.
But the
ledger.
deepfakes intercepted, right? Like whoever was the coders on that, they intercepted something, and if there was some kind of a blockchain technology, you would be able to see the break.
For the biometrics?
Well, for what's happening with the deepfakes hacking into this, like, what would you suggest would be where they would go technology-wise, based on what we have now?
Yeah, so it's about detecting the artifacts in the actual image or the audio or whatever it is that are unnatural, and they become sort of like it's effectively a statistics problem. Like, think of it like if you create truly randomness, it's an even distribution. Like, in truly randomness is evenly distributed across all possibilities. But when you have machines making things, we can't make machines do things random. It's pseudo-random.
Yeah.
But over enough data samples, pseudo-random is still not random.
Yeah.
And so you will see patterns emerge, and there are no patterns in random. And so when we create deepfakes and other things, we're creating tools to identify that, call it not randomness, that emerges in these things. And it's super complicated. I'm way oversimplifying it, but you create a tool that can say, there's no way that this is a human, because humans don't move like this. Or like audio, there's pauses in breathing and things that don't make it into...
That are not random.
They can't be generated by the machine today in a way that's undetectable. And so we find those exploits in the thing that generated it, and they become like fingerprints of the deep fake.
Crazy. Let's try to wrap this back to how we can help our listeners and clients before
I think the big thing, to your point earlier, is learning how to be effective with these new tools. You know, when the hammer was invented, we could build a house, we could build a bench, we clubbed each other over the head with it. Like, there were so many uses for it, but you needed to use the hammer to figure out what's the best things for you for using a hammer. And so people need to start integrating these into their daily workflows. And it's like any other skill. You get better at it with time, right?
I might even suggest, there are some people who think that it can all be done from a computer, but based on how I'm understanding where we're going, it's the observation of the intangibles that result in the inputs. And so when we were brought to a company and we actually can see what's going on.
Yeah.
Like, there's not an AI eye that can kind of walk
today
that can walk around the company, see all the intangibles, and then say, how about this? So what humans can do are be the eyes that can observe and figure out what the right questions are.
And to direct.
Because if somebody's just sitting at a computer or a chief marketing officer saying, what about this? What about that? But they're not going out. They're not seeing what a customer experience is. It's the human processing of seeing a bunch of humans.
Absolutely.
That it's doing.
Yeah.
And then it puts the input into AI. Do you see what I mean? Like
Absolutely.
It's that decision that's so valuable.
Yeah, and it's those things that are not easily observable by the systems today, where humans become extremely valuable. Like seeing how someone's using your product in the wild. There may be uses for your product that you never intended, right? Like they're using it for some. You're like, holy crap, that's an entire market we never even thought of, and the algorithm isn't going to necessarily discover new. Otherwise unseen use cases for something, because a lot of those things are discovered by accident, like you were saying earlier about linear thinking, and then someone just does something different. And so the human's ability to observe isn't going to be replaced anytime soon.
And I think quality of the observation is in the brain of the human, because one person can see something going on and not see a bunch of stuff.
Exactly.
And another person who's got a range of experience can come in and say, hey, that doesn't look right. That person doesn't even know what they're experiencing, so it's the quality of the observation.
And I think a thing that's going to sort of hold on to that for a time is humans' inherent desire for privacy. And there's so many environments that we're not going to open up to electronic observation because we don't want to be observed in those environments, right? And so we still need a human to provide that insight and value that comes from those spaces to these systems to leverage that data. Because it's not going to be from a camera. It's not going to be from a microphone. It's going to be only from a human.
Really deep and good material here for everybody. No, I think this is actually on par with some of the Lex Friedman things out there. So there you go. Do you have any other questions? I have one final question I want to hit Chris with at the end, but I know that your followers have been asking you a lot of questions about AI. Anything you have to wrap it up?
I have 2 questions. I'm not entirely sure you can answer the second one, but I'm going to go for it anyways. I think we probably should have started with this, but ChatGPT kind of is like become almost the Kleenex. Like when you talk about more advanced AI programs. Could you explain what ChatGPT is and kind of, I guess, where where AI is kind of, I guess, going?
So ChatGPT is a chat interface on top of what's called a large language model. And so a large language model is the brain of ChatGPT. And so the OpenAI trains these models based on, terabytes and terabytes and terabytes of data, huge amounts of data. And it learns all the semantics and learns language and all this stuff, and it gets encoded into these models. So ChatGPT is a way to put a user interface that has short-term memory on top of the model. So you're not interfacing directly with OpenAI's model. You're using an app called ChatGPT, and you type in a prompt into it. Like you put in, hey, why is the sky blue? Enter. That prompt gets passed to the model, which does a whole bunch of math and outputs a result. And that comes back to you. So then ChatGPT has memory. It knows back in history what you've talked about to that point, so that when you ask it a question in context of what you've been discussing, that whole context gets passed to the model to come up with the new answer. But the model itself doesn't have that memory. ChatGPT does. So ChatGPT is basically like a consumer experience on top of the AI model. So OpenAI also sells programmatic access to the raw model in the form of what's called an API, or an application programming interface. It's a way for developers to connect software to other pieces of software. And so when we build systems, we are not using ChatGPT at all. We are using that API, and we're effectively building our own ChatGPT on top of their engine. So the model is like the engine in the car. ChatGPT is I built
Steering wheel.
a stock car to rip around the Indy Raceway, and we built a pickup truck to move furniture around, but they both have the same engines. So it's ChatGPT unto itself is a user interface or user experience and tooling on top of their model.
Cool. And so why was ChatGPT so revolutionary?
So there was a thing called a transformer that was actually invented by Google in it's either 2017 or 2018. And it was a new way to build these models.
Google buried it a bit, didn't they? Or?
Not really. It was. I hesitate to comment on it since I used to work there, but essentially, OpenAI was very aggressive in let's just put it out there. Let's not worry about whether it's awesome or if it does any bad things. People need to start interacting with this because they do this thing called RLHF. It's reinforcement learning with human feedback. And so as you use it and you thumbs up and thumbs down what it does, it gets better because the human in the loop is telling it how to get better by saying this is good, this is bad, right? So once this new model mechanism, transformers, was discovered, that was that quantum leap from, we already had language models that could do text generation and things like that, but the transformer model was really like, it hit the nitro button on the steering wheel in terms of the capabilities we were able to bring to bear with this. And then OpenAI, through initially with Elon Musk, raised huge sums of money because training these models is extremely computationally expensive. So like GPT-2, which is like 2 generations back from where we are right now, just to train GPT-2, one go of training it took as much electricity, never mind the physical infrastructure and everything, the electricity of 90 houses for a year to just train it for GPT-2. And GPT-4 is orders of magnitude bigger, right? So these things are astronomically expensive to create and operate and run. Like OpenAI burns millions of dollars a day on just running the models.
Wow.
And so
That's the business.
they were able to convince investors, we're going to spend an astronomical amount of money, but we are going to fundamentally change the course of humanity through the creation of this new AI capability, and they were successful at it.
And everyone, from what I understand, like really blew them off. And it was until like it was either Bill Gates or
Microsoft invested $10 billion in them.
But it was I think it was Bill Gates that actually blew off initially until there was a certain question he wanted to have answered, and then he like put it in, and then when the machine spit it back, that was when he kind of had that like
holy shit moment,
Brave New World moment.
But he
of
was
like,
the wrong guy. Like his thing was earlier. Like what I get from this is Elon was also behind creating.
Yeah, he
AI,
put $100 million into OpenAI at the beginning.
And everybody wants to crap on Elon, but he's got electric cars, Neuralink, AI, SpaceX. Like
He's
person has done so much
for
because
the
his
planet.
thinking is different than others.
Well, and I think the thing that is what's happening right now, and I think it's interesting just to kind of consider multiple sides of it is, so Sam Altman, who's the CEO of OpenAI, he wants to raise $7 trillion, not billion, $1 trillion to build out the chip infrastructure for AI for the future. And in order to do it at the scale we're talking about, it's an astronomical proposition. But I don't think he's wrong. Like, he's being laughed at by some people saying, like, that's insane, $7 trillion, da-da-da-da-da.
Like, why would anyone laugh at him?
Like I said, in the Oppenheimer moment, do you think the United States had a budget for what it was going to take to do this?
Well, they spent a few trillion on Afghanistan.
It was at all
that's what I mean.
costs, right?
Where's Sam Altman going to go? Maldives? You know, like, we need a $7 trillion investment.
Humans used to do big, great things. And we stopped. And I'm not sure why. And we need to do that again for the future of humanity.
Yeah, like
that's Eric Weinstein
we have
saying,
no
like,
physics.
science is stalled, just making gadgets, but not doing anything great.
Yeah. What was the last truly great thing we did?
No.
I would say
No, it's
The
not the
iPhone.
iPhone. It's not the
OpenAI, but-
iPhone 14.
Yeah.
no.
It's not the new version. It's OpenAI.
Yeah.
But that's what Weinstein said. It's like the iPhone as a device is like, and that's like embarrassing as like being kind of the last
Yeah.
great piece of like technology.
Well, we've
is-
invested all our resources in making things cheaper and smaller.
Yeah, and
Like-
more
and
convenient. You know, like
distraction.
we can wash your clothes faster, but that's not moving the needle for humanity. Okay, then my second question is, and I don't know if you can answer this. Do you know off the cuff of some great tools that maybe aren't being leveraged for the creative industries? Like I recently came across Copy AI, and it's a game changer.
Yeah, the off the shelf tooling stuff on that side of things, to be perfectly honest, I'm not super familiar with it. I'm usually sort of building bespoke tooling for
Yes.
specific business problems.
And don't talk about that because that's our secret weapon is your insights into how we're better for our clients. But that's kind of what you get when you come to Third Eye Insights and our Thought Leader Labs is this type of thinking that you've seen on this podcast. It's not what they're teaching at business schools.
No.
Right now, it's a different order of thinking that people need to survive in the next few years, and you are.
Well, it's a skill set that is hard to come by, right?
Yeah.
Like there's not a lot of people running around that know how to build these things.
Yeah, you're an amazing individual who undersells yourself and is far too humble for the value you bring to the people around you and probably to society. So I hope
Thank
you enjoy your success. My final question is. Going back to the age-old question of what the answer is as posed in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which I recommend everybody revisit
42.
as a book, right? But the whole book was about what's the ultimate answer to the universe.
Yeah, 42.
And it came out as 42. And it's an interesting meme, but I just wonder when
Now
you
what's
talk
the
about
question?
when you talk about AI, if you were to put in an unlimited powerful AI system, what is the answer to the universe? It'd be interesting if it could ask every answer and come up. It's probably closer to the truth, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy at 42, than people just thought it was funny like 20 years ago. When it
Yeah,
came out.
absolutely. Well, that's why they built the Earth.
Yeah.
The Earth was the computer to answer what's the question. That the answer is 42.
It's so funny how that science fiction comedy is actually so relevant today.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's to my comment earlier about we went from could you imagine to I wonder how long. That's everything in Star Trek has basically come true, right? Mm-hmm. We've even teleported, not humans, but like individual particles. We've teleported them. Like that's a thing. Teleportation. Like everything.
That's a thing. That's funny.
Everything at a certain point is now I wonder how long, not could you imagine.
It makes you question
The
what you
Jetsons,
actually
we have
worry
flying
about.
cars that have been approved by the FAA coming on the market. Like, it's what a time to be alive. Like, I think we will be fortunate to reflect on having lived through the greatest moment of change in human history.
Brother, it's amazing to have you here. Thank you for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me.